Hi everyone, my name's Loughlin and today we will be cooking an amazing roast pork with crackle. I've got some apples here as well, so we'll be making an apple sauce of course. Now, a good roast pork with a great crackle has to be one of the most satisfying things to eat. The texture, the flavour, you know, it ticks a lot of those boxes. And it's a very, very common question that I receive as to how to get the best crackle. And there's so many different concepts around. A lot of people have different ideas on how to do it. My idea is to keep it simple, and I'm going to talk you through some of those tips today. Now here I've got a really beautiful free-range pork loin here. You can use it with the bones or without the bones. I still have a few bones underneath here, so that's okay. And I've actually dried this pork out in the fridge for 2 days. So I've actually had this sitting on a K-crack. The K-crack's been just sitting on a platter, uncovered in the fridge, and that helps to dry this skin out. Now, a lot of people say that you should buy a free-range piece of pork, but they don't really explain why free range is beneficial. And there's a few reasons why. Obviously, the farming practices are more sustainable, and that translates into better environmental moves, better flavour, all that sort of stuff. But it also comes down to how the animal is processed before it gets to our kitchens. So quite often, if you buy a piece of pork that's cryovac or vacuum sealed, the skin will be very, very soft, and that is almost impossible to crackle. If we had a cryovac piece of pork here and cooked it side by side, it would be very, very difficult to get the same crackle that we will get here today. This piece of pork has never seen plastic packaging, which is fantastic. So we've got a really, really firm skin, and the skin on here should be almost like orange peel. I guess that's the best way to look at it. And if it's really, really soft, then you'll need to dry it out in the fridge for a little bit longer. That is arguably the most important thing for a really good crackle. The next thing is scoring the pork. So of course, we'll score this very shortly. We'll then rub some salt in and some oil, and that's all we have to do from a preparation point of view. Behind me here, I have the oven, which is preheating to 250 degrees on Moisture Plus, and we are using 1 burst of steam. So we'll pop this into the oven, give it 1 burst of steam. This is where people get a little bit worried that the steam will affect the crackle. And actually what that will do is it will render out all of the excess fat in this pork skin. Therefore, there's less fat to crackle, therefore a crispier crackle. So it comes up excellent. So let's get to it. I've got a couple of knives. I'll only need one obviously, but grab a sharp knife. I'm using a boning knife, which works really well. And on a 45-degree angle, about 1 centimetre apart, start to score the pork. Now you want to go a few millimetres deep, but obviously you don't want to cut through the actual skin. So we'll work one way and be really, really careful because this is quite tough. So, take your time here because you don't want the knife to slip. And you can even ask your butcher to do this as well. Okay, so we've gone one way. I'll now just bring it the other way and I'll go back this way. So we're just doing a crisscross pattern. And the more scoring you do, the more surface area, the more room for the heat to get into, and the better the crackle will crackle. And that also means when this is finished cooking, it's actually easier to carve. So get into this, almost there. There we go, the oven's preheated. There we go. So that's scored, beautiful. We'll grab our oven tray. So I'm using a multi-purpose tray with our grilling and roasting insert inside. Now this elevates the meat in the dish, and essentially all the excess fat will drip below this insert. It won't bounce back up, so it keeps your oven a bit cleaner, and it keeps your meat away from all those excess fats and oils. So we've got it centered on the tray nicely. Grab some salt. Now you want a reasonably generous amount. So you can see there's a good tablespoon or so, and really firmly rub it into the pork. And you actually want to try and get this to fall in between a lot of those scoring marks. So be quite aggressive, work it in. Some will fall onto the tray, that's fine. So that's good. We can't actually see a lot on the surface, but we've got lots in those cracks. So we're on track, which is excellent. Grab a little bit of oil. Now, this whole surface here is basically fat, and fat is oil, so we don't need to do too much. So about a tablespoon or so is perfect, and just rub that in So we've just got a nice even coating of a loose oil, and this will help to get the start of this process looking great. We then, if you have an oven with this, I'm using the food probe today. So I'm sticking the food probe right into the pork, like so. I've got this on a slight angle, it's reasonably parallel, but it should be perfectly fine. And I'm going to set the oven to cook this to an internal core temperature of 60 degrees. Now the pork has to be about 65 before it's food safe, but when this rests, it actually gains in temperature. It's called carryover cooking. So as long as we rest this for 10 to 20 minutes, and ideally longer, I'll probably rest this for half an hour today, this pork will actually continue to cook internally and get nice and warm, and it'll be perfectly safe. This in the oven will take no longer than 1 hour. I'm guessing 45 to 55 minutes, and this is about a 2 kilo pork loin, so quite a quick thing to cook. And then you have that 20 to 30 minutes of resting time for then you to utilize your oven space to, I don't know, roast some more potatoes or roast some vegetables, all of that sort of stuff as well. And of course, you can add those items into the oven with this pork. So we'll get this into the oven, as I said, 250 degrees with Moisture Plus on shelf level 2. I'm injecting that burst of steam straight away, and about half an hour into the cook, I will drop this temperature down to about 160 degrees. So by that point, the crackle will have been achieved. We'll turn the temperature down just to cook the meat through. Now, it wouldn't be a roast pork if we didn't have apple sauce. So here I've got some Granny Smith apples, I've got some butter, some Chinese 5-spice, and some salt. That's all it is. Obviously, you can mix this up as much as you want. What I'm going to do now is peel the apples. You can even leave the skin on if you want to, but I prefer this to be a bit of a smoother sauce. So we'll peel these. I'll then core them, dice them, whack them all into this solid steam container. With all the other ingredients, we'll steam it at 100 degrees for 15 minutes, which will make it really, really nice and soft. And then we'll just blend it with a stick blender. So I'll get cracking on these apples. I'll show you all that sort of bits and bobs. And it's really as simple as that. So the apples are peeled. I'm just going to chop these now, making sure I don't include the core. If you have an apple corer, of course you can use that. Now we don't need to chop these in any particular way. As long as they are a rough dice, something that sort of size, that's perfectly fine. This will all go quite mushy in the steam oven, and then we'll blend it. So be pretty organic with the way you go about it. Once we've got all the apples in, I will throw in the spices and the salt just to evenly coat those. And then we'll throw in the lump of butter, and into the steam oven it goes. Okay, so all of this apple is ready to go. So my Chinese 5-spice, I'll just sprinkle that over the top, a pinch of salt, and just using your hands, work this in to get that dry ingredient evenly distributed around the apple. It doesn't have to be perfect, but have a good mix around. About 2 tablespoons of butter thereabouts. This is optional. If you have lactose intolerant people in your family, obviously you can omit it, but it just helps give that nice creaminess throughout the sauce. Into the steam oven, 100 degrees, 15 minutes. That's all it is. Okay, so the apples are all cooked, and I guess when you're cooking these apples, just grab a spoon, and if they completely mush up like they have here, you're ready to go. So if you don't have a steam oven, this can also be cooked off just on the stove, really low and slow until they do start to break down. I've now got a stick blender. I'm just going to start to pulse this a little bit until it goes nice and smooth, and really you can blend this to the consistency that you like. So it's free reign. If you like a chunky sauce, perfect. If you like a smooth sauce, go for it. So up to you. I'll bring the camera across so you can see inside of what I'm doing, and then all we have to do is wait for the pork to finish cooking. Okay, there we go. So we still have a little bit of texture. That's exactly what we're after. So now this sauce is finished and I can transfer it to a bowl. Okay, so there we go. There's still a bit of texture in this. There's still a few chunks there, which is excellent. As I said, make it to the consistency that you like. Now, all we need to do is grab a serving dish or something. I normally grab a few small ones so I can put it down the table, because it's definitely something that is pretty popular in my family. So spoon this up. And I like this sauce sort of room temp, not cold, but not really hot. So it's up to you. That can sit to the side now. Once the pork's cooked and rested, we can serve these two together. So for now, put your feet up, wait for the pork to cook, and we're almost there. Okay, here we go. Pork is looking fantastic. Crackle's really, really nice. I don't know if you can hear the sizzling, but it's really active. And when I rub the knife across it, it sounds pretty crisp to me. So now the most important thing that we need to do is let this rest for 20 minutes. As I said earlier, this is going to build in temperature, so this will keep getting warm for the next 15 to 20 minutes internally. I know it doesn't make sense, but it happens, which is excellent. So I'm going to leave this here. I'll come back in 15 minutes, we can start to carve it, and then we are all finished. So it really is as simple as that. Hot oven, minimal prep, a good piece of pork, and you get the most amazing crackle. The pork has now had 15 to 20 minutes of resting time. Look at that crackle, it's just amazing. Like super, super crisp, and I really can't wait to tuck into this. It's going to be very, very tasty. Now, when it comes to carving the pork, a lot of people use a carving knife or a cook's knife or something like that, and that will probably do the job, but the easiest tool is a bread knife. And those serrations help to cut through the crackle. Now, as I mentioned, this piece I've got today has got some bones in it, so I'm gonna have to try and find a gap. But here, that crunch, there we go, cut through the, just get through the gap where the bone is. Oh. Down like so. It's got a nice large chop. I'll lay that way. So your crackle will fall apart, but that's okay, because everyone likes to grab those little bits off the tray. So continue to carve along until your pork's nicely chopped up, lay it out on a serving platter, and serve it with the apple sauce. So here we have it, beautiful roast pork. This is so succulent and so juicy. It really is so tender. The crackle in the end was so crisp that it literally just broke apart. So I've just scattered this over the top, as you can see here. So serve that on the table, a bit of a sprinkle of salt on top, applesauce to the side, and I have no doubts that this will go down an absolute hit with you and the family. So thank you so much for watching. We would love it if you give this recipe a crack. If you do, please pop it up on the socials. So pop it up on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you tag us along, as we would love to follow you in your journey.